Welcome everybody. Blessed are those that visit this channel and enjoy the content here.
Henrik Blue Bjork is one of my favourite esports competitors of all time. He's one of the early players that I noticed that really leapt off the screen to me. Like, I was compelled, I had to watch all of his games. His ability seemed incredible. One of the things that made him so special was he was a Quake dueler in the early 2000s, later branched out into CS, played some Quake 4. First of all, he was incredibly talented. Like, his level of mechanical ability, particularly obviously with the rail, but also with air rockets, was at a time when there weren't that many players that had super crazy aim in this particular sense. He also pushed the boundaries of what was possible in the game with weapons like the railgun that was supposed to be more of a specialist weapon. You added as a supplementary gun in your game, not the main weapon you played around. His potential as a player seemed unlimited. His talent was that powerful. And more importantly, at least during his Quake era, he was actually starting to develop the mental game, the strategic and tactical understanding that could have made him a true champion, could have made him what a player like a Lakerman, a 0-4 Fatality were around that point in time and what they represented in Quake. Not just an aim monster, which you've had many of in Quake, and he was absolutely one of the best of, but if you're just an aim monster, just a guy who hits rail shots, just a guy who wins when you hit, what at the time, 40% rail, later 60% rail, you will be pigeonholed and considered a lesser player. The champions have the all-around skills. It's not just about aim, even though certainly people like Cypher, Avec had amazing aim, 0-4 as well to go along with it. Now, Blue, as I referenced, it's rare I mention people's actual first and last names, their birth names, because in this particular case, it's relevant because the name Blue, it's too ubiquitous a word, right? It's not a name you can just type into Google and find something about. So I had to give his name Henrik Bjork. He's a guy who would now be, the same age as me, 35. He was born in 1983, so he's way too old now. You're not going to see him in esports again. He first got his start in Quake 2. In Quake 2, towards the end of the European scene being a big thing, so we're talking mainly about like 1999 going into 2000. This was when Quake 2 was like leaving being the number one esports game. We were moving into Quake 3 and Counter-Strike. And even though Quake 2 continued fairly healthy in terms of top players, the likes of Damier and Puri coming along, it wasn't a big esport anymore. It was very much a niche enthusiast, aficionado hobby at that point in time, being the best at that game. At the end of the game, we had this big European Duel League final where what they did as a special prize was you qualified online by being the best duelers in Europe, and then they were going to have the tournament play out, and whoever the champion was, they were going to fly out Machiavelli, the top Quake 2 dueler in North America. Thresh had already retired. He'd really taken the number one spot at this point in time, and you would play an exhibition match against him. Now, at EDL itself, Blue ended up losing out to Shub, who was the best Quake player in all of Europe in Quake 2. He was not only an amazing duel player, he was one of the absolute best TDM players. He played for the clan Memento Mori, which funnily enough Blue very temporarily joined at the end of Quake 2, but they didn't really get much time to play for, this Norwegian clan who famously went undefeated for a long period of time because Quake 3 came along. But at this EDL final, so Shub beat him out, and so Shub was going to play Machiavelli in the final. Now at this LAN, Blue agreed to play some practice games against Machiavelli, and one of them, quite infamously, he played on Quake 2 DDM, Q2 DM1, The Edge, which is obviously the most famous Quake 2 duel map at least, and famously he beat Machiavelli in this game, even though Machiavelli, I think the story was, beat him on some other games on Q2 DM3, and overall Machiavelli was the better player clearly, and Machiavelli indeed went on to beat Shub in the exhibition game, therefore cementing his status as the best player in the world at Quake 2, and the best of the last great Quake 2 players before it became more of a niche industry, and not really a top esport anymore. So this upset win, and the fact that Demo got out there, was significant. People saw the skills that Blue was bringing to the table. Crazy rail aim, very nice air rockets. I believe in that game he even hit a crazy air rocket. It was near the outside area over where the railgun area is, like someone was jumping over there and he hits him with an air rocket. So clearly already had exceptional individual ability. Didn't necessarily have the strongest fundamentals for running the map, but could run the map quite basically. The Edge wasn't as complicated a map to run overall in that sense. You basically played it off sound cues, and if you had the rail, you dominated the opponent from long range where he couldn't fight you. But we come to Quake 3, and in Quake 3, first of all, his talent's clearly noted because eventually he gets picked up by Clan 9. They were the biggest team in Europe at the time for esports, obviously obviously hailing from Cafe 9 in Stockholm, a very big internet cafe at the time, which had spawned the best Quake World clan, and at this point in time was a key place that the likes of NIP and CS were going and playing from their LAN. That's why they were called Team 9 for a while. So joining this team was very prestigious, and this meant you had legit backing where you could go to all the big tournaments. And in the early days of Quake 3, Clan 9 was sponsored by Razer, who at the time were the biggest esports related peripheral developer and were getting a lot of money from selling the boom slangs, etc., and investment, and therefore this team had real backing. Now, the real breakout tournament for Blue in Quake 3 was obviously the Razer CPL, because at this tournament, it was a massive tournament. It was the first truly big Quake World Championship where you had all the top players from around the world go to it. You had like easily 128 names. You had all the big names there from Quake World and Quake 2 and the early Quake 3 players. And everyone was going to compete and see who the best was. Now, coming in, obviously there weren't a lot of tournaments before that. There'd been some CPLs in Q3 test, but Blue hadn't played in them. So Blue ended up with a pretty bad seed. He only got the 49th seed, which means in your bracket, you're going to get a lot of top names. Now, he went on a monster run through this tournament. He had some very impressive wins, and in the end finished up 5th place overall, ahead of numerous great players, including people who later on would go on to be amazing players like Lakerman, like 04, number of the best players in the world. This is a guy who took a 49th seed and ran it up to 5th place overall. Particularly, it was his ability to get lucky with the dice rolls and have 24. Not Pro Q3 24, this is before the Pro OSP mod came along. This is where we were playing on the original 24 with the floor damage and without the bottom teleporter. You had to come up jump pads to get up to the top. So at this point in time, at least I think that's correct, isn't it? I don't fucking know. That can't be right, actually, because surely you teleport out the top. No, I think you had to come up the jump pad, so you could control the upper air level. Now, it turned out, because this guy was a rail god, and I'm talking about a rail god even against really good railers, that by getting this map so many times, he was knocking loads of maps. I think he played Python on that map, he played Pure on that, I think he played Hakeem and Duma. These are all established players. I mean, Pure's not as famous as he was later on for TDM, but people like Python, the best Australian player, Hakeem was the best player from the UK and had actually won one of the early Q3 test Quake CPLs. I think it would have been, let me think, Frag 3, I think it was. Dumo was a legendary Swedish Quake player. He was even in Clan 9, known for being a strong player. Lakerman obviously later on became the best European Quake 3 player and already at this point was a very strong player in Europe and one of the best. So this was insane stuff, knocking out these kinds of players. In the end, crucially, he lost one of his games to PowerK, who was the Korean sensation who finished 3rd place with an amazing run at this tournament. So incredible run. Yes, getting a bit lucky drawing that map over and over again, but when getting to do so, showing off superior raw skills, particularly aim skill, compared to the rest of the field. And at the time, hitting 40% rail was a crazy number. Remember, people were back then on ball mice still, on small mouse pads, high sensitivities, not a great understanding of the console. So hitting 40% rail was seriously crazy shit. And he was doing it game after game after game. Obviously, it was best of 1 double elimination in this tournament. Now, beyond that, there were still some very, very impressive performances. So later in the year, he went to the CPL Asia. It's called Atomic Arena. And at this tournament, there were a bunch of good players in the field. Fatality was there. There was Zenon was there. I think Sujoy went to that one. And then there was some good Asian players, like a guy called S21 actually ended up beating Fatality on a map. Now, at this tournament, Blue reached the final and beat Fatality, I think even on 2 games. He beat him on DM13, which was Fatality's map at the time, because it had no rail and you could run it based on spawn timings and understanding the armor timing, and you could just control the whole map. And Fatality had basically won the Razer CPL doing that and become the #1 player in Quake. Now, Blue was able to beat Fatality at his own game, showcasing, first of all, no rail, because there's no rail on the map, but more importantly, by showcasing some strategy. Like, he had an idea of what to do against Fatality. When he would get a frag lead, he would hide in the area near the jump pad and the shotgun inside that you drop down to get the mega health. He would hide around these areas, he would catch Fatality out, he would draw Fatality in, he wouldn't get caught in the middle of the map out of place and have to have a pure up aim fight with Fatality, who with no rail involved, Fatality was still a pretty strong individual player. So he managed to beat out Fatality in a way that showed he had brain as well as aim, and this was very, very alluring. Now, unfortunately, at the same time, Blue started playing CS in the early days, and he was playing with the Geek Boys guys, with people like BDS, and who later on went on to be SK Scandinavia, playing with the likes of Vicon. And so at this point in time, his interest in Quake started to die out a little bit. He didn't go to the European CPLs, so we didn't get to see him at the likes of CPL Holland or CPL Cologne, etc. But we did see him at the end of 2000. He went to the next big Quake CPL, which was Babbage's CPL. And this is the one where infamously he only finished 33rd to 64th, but not entirely due to his fault. Like, one of the key losses he had was on Tony 4, and it came against a player called Excalibur, who didn't go on to do anything after that, wasn't a famous player. And part of the reason he lost to this guy is because at the time, it was a new version of Quake, I think like 1.19 or something. And one of the changes was now you could use 125 hertz sampling. And I believe, I can't remember if it was him or his opponent, but whoever was using this, we didn't know it at the time, but it turned out there could be a bug where it meant that some of your shots would register on your computer, but wouldn't register on the server. And so Blue basically couldn't do, I think, either shotgun or rail damage to the opponent, and the opponent was just hitting him with his bullets. Therefore, the opponent won the game, but in shocking fashion. Because of this, the CPL actually gave Blue the equivalent to a 9th to 12th place finish, prize money, and therefore ensured he had good seeding for the next tournament, because they knew we couldn't go back in time and play all these matches again. But obviously it's a bug that's fucked this guy over. And sadly, that was a tournament where Blue was primed to do serious work. And I think that, along with his interest in CS, soured him on Quake, and he basically just left Quake completely and didn't play the rest of the tournaments after that. So he wasn't at the WCGs. Instead, he goes over to CS. In CS, like I said, he was with the Geek Boys guys, with BDS, who comes from Quake originally, and from Excess Reality, which was the big Quake site. He was a Swedish guy as well. Then he eventually becomes SK Scandinavia, the first Scandinavian lineup to play for SK, which is notable in itself, because obviously later they got the Swedish players, Heaton and Porty, etc., and became a dynasty over there. They went to CPL Winter 2001, famously the first true major in CS, 1.6, I mean it was 1.3 at the time, and they finished 9th to 12th, not a bad placing overall, but still ended up losing out to some of the teams that you wouldn't have expected to from North America. He was also in the lineup that went to CPL Cologne in 2002, where they finished 3rd place behind, again, All Authority, and 1st place was Westerlund and Dark and Executor's Nordic Division team, so not a bad placing either. Generally didn't accomplish that much though in CS, like obviously wasn't his main game, and this is the early days, and you either were on top or you were nothing back then. He did do a brief comeback in esports in Quake 4, when Quake 4 had its circuit popping off with the WSVGs and all those tournaments in 2006 and 2007. In 2006, he came back, he played WSVG ISC, he finished top 16 there, not bad. He went to QuakeCon, finished top 8 there, again, not bad overall, and finished 2nd in the 2v2 tournament, playing with Too Good of Fnatic. So he was a good player, but he wasn't anywhere close to his prime. He didn't have the same insane mechanical edge over most people. He was just an okay player in Quake 4. I think the thing for me that's so tantalizing about Blue was, first of all, he produced some incredible demos at the time, especially those 24 games. Secondly, beyond just his rail, his air rockets were unbelievable. There's one of the most famous ones ever, which is in that movie Clip Quake, where he's playing 2v2. I think he's against Zorgal, and he goes under the pillars area on Q3DM6, where the yellow armor's above, and as Zorgal's dropping down, he hits him with 3 air rockets direct above him, like snap, flicks him up. One of the, still to this day, one of the most bonkers sets of shots. And this was back in, like, we're talking like 2000, 2001. So this is the really early days. And Zorgal, by the way, was a top Swedish player. So again, you could already see some crazy shit from the guy. His mechanical ability had the ability to wow everyone. Even though he himself was just a Swedish guy, very quiet, very reserved, didn't want a lot of media hype. His games spoke in volumes about how nuts his raw ability was, from Quake 2 to Quake 3. Sadly, he didn't stick around in Quake 3, so we never got to see what more he could have done. And especially that performance at CPL Atomic Asia, beating out at the time prime Fatality, was so key for me, because this was a guy who was starting to show he could also do the mental aspect of the game. He wasn't just a mechanical monster. He could develop that part of his game. And so when you think of what people like Lair Command 04, Fatality, even beyond that, did with Quake and Quake dueling, he could have accomplished so much more and made himself a true legend of the game. Not just a pretty good player who had a period he was very good, but then ultimately died off, and esports now has forgotten him, and I'm having to make a video like this for anyone even remember who the guy was. This video was kindly supported by Andreas, Snazore Westerlund, Dean Tanglis, Gardner Wilson, Landon Thompson, Tobias Bernasconi, OllieJ, NateDOhDoubleG, Kyla Harris, Travis Greb, Daniel Yordanov, James Harding, VeXii, Robert Baxter, Lucas Kerza Szczesny, and a special thanks, as always, goes out to my man, Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest to feature in my upcoming content? Perhaps you want to ask me a question in my monthly AMA. Do you want teasers from my upcoming content? See who the next guests are going to be. Perhaps you'd like to take part in a discussion about esports with me. Well, any and all of the above exclusives are available for my patrons, so put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link below.